We are doing a little things a little different. We're actually going to go live on Facebook. And so, hello to everybody out there in Facebook world. This is Sunday school at Harvest Church, and we're in the sanctuary, and we're doing Genesis, which we've been on for a year and a half. And we have had, I think, a really, really great time with this. And so I want to encourage you all, if you have any questions or comments, just join in the conversation as you would like. We'll review Genesis 47 and 48 again, and then we'll go from there. They've updated my app, so it just updated on me. So just a second, guys. As soon as it finishes updating. Anybody have any comments or anything you'd like to share from a takeaway over the last few weeks out of Genesis? Y'all don't talk me down. Last few weeks we've been talking about what's happening with when you look at the story of Jacob going back to Egypt and everything, and how Jacob came back to Beersheba, and this is the place where God spoke to Abraham, where he spoke to him, and where he made the promise originally to Jacob, and then he went on to tell Jacob that he'd have all these descendants. Jacob went down to the land where he got his wife, Rachel, and company, and then he came back, and his family's been living in the land of Canaan, and now Joseph has been traded and sold and all this into slavery. He's going through and elevated up until he's the prime minister, second in command in Egypt in terms of position and in terms of authority, according to Pharaoh himself. He is the person who is in charge of the nation. Literally, he said, other than my ring and in name, you are the leader of this nation. So he's taking care of everything. Now his family, the brothers have come and back and forth, and now they're finally bringing Jacob back. And Jacob is coming back with his kids and his family, and he's back at the point of Beersheba. And if you go back and study the history out, when he came to Beersheba the first time, guess what happened? He left there. He was running because of what? Anybody remember why he was at Beersheba to begin with? That was because he had tricked his brother. Jacob had tricked his brother, got his inheritance, and so he's alone, remember, because he was running. He's all alone. But this time in Beersheba, he's back there, and what happened? He comes back, and now he has his sons and his grandchildren and everything, and God reaffirmed his promise to him. Remember, God came to him and said, hey, it says God spoke to Israel, but he called him what? Jacob. And what do we take away from that? Israel is who God had renamed him. What did Jacob mean? Deceiver, trickster, all of this stuff. And God comes to him, and it says, the word says, he spoke to Israel, but he said, Jacob. Why do y'all think he said that? Think about it. Why do you think he said it? Why do you think he said it? Remind him of what? Of who he is, right? Right. So you look at it, he's like, listen, I'm speaking to Israel. I'm speaking to the king in you. I'm speaking to who you are. But I have to remind that trickster and all of that that that's not who you are. And anybody in here, any parents in here, ever wanted to call your kids outside of their name? But then you have to remember you're speaking to who they can become and not who they were. Huh? Yes, and who they are in that moment. And so, and so he he was able to speak to him and say, listen, I need you to understand who you are and what I've done in you and what I'm going to do in you and through you. And he reminded him of the promise, which was what? That he would be a great nation. And of course, from there, he goes out from there to become a great nation. And it says he left from there going to Egypt, going back to Egypt, back to Joseph. And what was he going there for? He went back there to meet Joseph, and they were going to move where? Anybody remember where they moved to? Yes. In the best land of Egypt. And what was that best land called? Goshen, right? They settled in Goshen. And Goshen, if you look at like a satellite map of Goshen right now, if you look at it from a satellite map, it was the land that would be green on the map. It would be the green on the map. Why is that important? Because was it the best land in Egypt? If it was the best land in Egypt, why was it unoccupied? Go ahead. Yeah, correct. What we sometimes think is the best land, we could be looking at it through the wrong eyes, right? It says that the Egyptians hated Hebrews and hated shepherds. But Pharaoh said, give your brother, here it says, Joseph went and told Pharaoh, my father and brother with their flocks and herds and everything they have come from the land of Canaan and are now in Goshen. So he hasn't asked Pharaoh for the land yet, but he has them in Goshen. And then it says he chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. Verse 3, Pharaoh asked the brothers, what is your occupation? Your servants are shepherds, they replied to Pharaoh, just as our fathers were. They also said to him, we have come to live here for a while because the famine is severe in Canaan and your servants' flocks have no pasture. So now please let your servants settle in Goshen. Verse 5, Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brother in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen. And if that you know of any among them with special ability, put them in charge of my own livestock. So stop right there. So when you read that, he says, let them have the best land. Did the Egyptians really, did Pharaoh really think he was giving them the best land? Or was he giving them what was best for them? And sometimes that's different. Sometimes we can have a mindset of what's best because someone else's best. The Egyptians didn't do a whole lot with livestock. They didn't do a whole lot with animals and stuff like that. So having a bunch of green pasture didn't mean a whole lot to them. But to the Egyptians, who were what? Their economy and their lifestyle was what? Agricultural based. And have you ever thought they came there with all of these animals? So why were there a famine? If the Egyptians had they came back with all this livestock, why was there a famine? I mean, not the Egyptians, the Hebrews. Ever thought about that? Yeah, I mean, it says it was a famine in the land, but it says they came back with what? All these livestock and animals and all of that. So why would they be hungry if there was a famine, if they had all these livestock and animals? Yeah. And so what did Joseph put back? He put what did Joseph store up for 7 years? Grain. What was the image in the thing he saw? He saw grain, and then what did he see? What was the other thing he saw? The cattle were all what? Fat. And then in the negative, that they were all skinny, and no matter how much they ate, they never could get full. And so when you look at that, even though they had livestock, the livestock would all die because no one could grow enough grain for themselves and their livestock, and that's why they had to. So I used to go, but they had plenty of animals to eat. Why didn't they just eat the animals? Well, all those animals would have been dead had they not been getting the grain from Joseph. So, but they settled in Goshen. There's another part, if you go back and look at Goshen, when it comes to Egypt and the Promised Land, Goshen was one of the closest settlements to them being able to leave Egypt when they went into the Promised Land. So it wasn't just about the grass and the food but it was also about location and proximity. When they got ready to leave, of course, how many years later did they leave after this? About 400. So they settle here at this time, have all types of favor with the Pharaoh and Joseph, but they settle there. And I don't know if you guys remember me teaching this because I taught it pretty quick last week. He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. Anybody want to take a guess at why you think he may have chose 5 brothers? Because it was, 6 other brothers plus him. But he only took 5 and presented them to Pharaoh. Now I don't study numerology in the sense of spooky stuff, but I believe that the Bible is laden with numbers and showing you what their meanings are. 6 is the number of man, 7 is the number of completion, 8 is the number of new beginnings, 3 is the number of mercy, 5 is the number of grace. So think about this. Who have we said all throughout this study that Joseph represent or is a type and shadow of? Of Jesus, right? So, and who would Pharaoh be in this story? In this story right here. Joseph is Jesus. Pharaoh would be God, and who would the 5 brothers be? Who? Us, Christians, right? If this is a type and shadow, and what is Joseph doing here? He's doing what to the 5 brothers? Presenting them to Pharaoh, or the same thing that Jesus does, right? Jesus will do what? Present us to the Father. What's interesting, what do you think he did here? Because what could he have done here? Hey, Pharaoh, these my 5 brothers. These same jokers that sold me into slavery, betrayed me, lied to my daddy. I mean, he could have went in on them, right? He could have gone all in on all the stuff that they did to him. And then what do you think Pharaoh's response would have been? Been totally different, right? But what did he choose to do here? He presented his brothers as if, hey, these are my 5 brothers, and they need some good stuff. They need land, right? Well, what land did they need? If you go back and read, they needed somewhere to settle and raise their livestock. He had already picked out Goshen for them. Why? Because it was the best place for them. What does it tell us that Jesus is doing right now? Jesus is already preparing a place for us before he ever presents us to the Father. But he still is going to present us to the Father, right? But he still prepared a place for us. And thanks and glory be to God that he doesn't what? And that he don't bring up all of the stuff that we, yeah, that he doesn't throw us under the bus. He doesn't get up and go, now, hey, God, now this is Martin. Now, you know when he was 12, you remember what he did. And then we thought he was getting better, and then he turned 15 and lost his mind. And then about 18, we thought, well, finally he's going to get it. And now he lived another 100 years, and he was still doing it. But, yeah, I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean, but do we actually find ourselves sometimes doing that? Like we'll introduce somebody and we call ourselves doing it as a favor to them, but we'll start off with something negative. Yeah, hey, this is such and such, man. Don't worry about what he did last week and the fact that he's not real smart. What I need you to do is help him. But we will do that and not realize it. But here's Jesus once again showing what? Showing grace. Yes. He shows grace, right? And so we need to be conscious of, of showing grace as we go through. Let's keep reading. Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you in the land of Egypt. Nope. I already read that. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. And I don't really get why he says this as far as few. He was 130 at this point. And this is where that was kind of the beginning to be the average age. So I really don't know, and I'm gonna have to study that more. But I don't know why he said, compared to my fathers, they've been few. When Abraham and Isaac would be the immediate two that he was referring to. But he says it, and I get they have been difficult. Why do you think he makes that statement that they've been difficult? Yeah, if you go back and said it, for those who've not been in the class the whole time, y'all, Jacob was not a great example of a father in terms of favoritism. I mean, he literally he would throw all his kids under the bus for Benjamin and Joseph. Like he was going to let his entire family starve before he let Benjamin go back with them. They said, we can't go back, Dad, unless we take Benjamin with us. And it says that by the time they finally convinced him to let Benjamin go, that they could have been down and back on a trip. And you have to understand, this was a several 100-mile trip, and they were on feet. So it wasn't like us jumping in our car and driving up to Birmingham and back. It was a journey. And then, of course, he had sent Joseph out at 17, and Benjamin at this point had to be in his 20s when he was telling them he couldn't go. Because Joseph had been gone how long? For 20 years. So, and Benjamin was little brother then. So, and then by the time he goes back, It was even after the famine had happened. So, not a great example of a father there, but I think most of his difficulty he considered really difficult was the fact that he had, think about his life. He had deceived his brother, lost his mom, never saw his mom again, who did all this stuff to get him the blessing, but he never saw her again because while he was gone, she passed away. And then he comes back, and now he's lost his son, and now he thinks he's going to lose his other son. I think that's what it's all about. Any questions on that? Verse 11. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramesses, as Pharaoh directed. Joseph also provided his father and his brother and all his father's household with food according to the number of their children. Verse 13. There was no food, however, in the whole region because the famine was severe. Both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan in payment for the grain they were buying, and he brought it to Pharaoh's palace. When the money of the people of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all Egypt came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? Our money is all gone." So now Joseph. This is who all works in a job outside of the church. We all do, right? What is one of the misnomers about Christians when it comes to business? Huh? That we lack? No, I don't think so. I think people think we don't. I think seriously, I think people think Christians can be taken advantage of. I think they think Christians are pushovers. I think they think that Christians won't stand up. I could be wrong, so counteract that. I think people look at Christians and we think, oh, it's just I'm going to pray and it's going to get done. I'm going to put a fish on my car and then I'm going to be blessed. Am I? Y'all looking at me. Y'all looking at me. Am I wrong? I'm not saying that that's true. I'm saying I think that's a mindset a lot of people have. I even think Christians have that mindset. I think Christians sometimes think that because they start something, because God told them to start something, that's gonna mean that their business is gonna be blessed because God told them to do it. Easy targets, gullible. Yep. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. I think yeah. Anyone else have a thought or a comment on that? I think that that Christians many times are viewed as not as shrewd of business people, meaning that we sometimes, from a grace standpoint and a mercy standpoint, people would take advantage because they think Christians won't get upset or shouldn't get upset and shouldn't be strong and stern, and it's not Christ-like. What did it say about Joseph here? If people, let's put this in today's culture. Joseph has every. He's the leader of the most powerful nation in the world, and it says Joseph collected all the money. Now, before it says that, it says there was no food in the whole region because the famine was severe. Both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money that was found in Egypt and Canaan. Now, technically, Joseph really, if you had this vision, Joseph, and you're really a man of God, why didn't you go tell all the other nations to prepare for the famine? Right? I mean, was that not an option? Could Egypt have told the rest of the world? But they didn't. Right? Is that Christ-like? But that's what drew his family back. If the whole world finds out and prepares for the famine, does Joseph's family ever come back to Egypt? God provided a way, but it may not be the way we think it should be done. And sometimes we as business people and stuff like that, God tells us to be as gentle as doves and as shrewd as what? Serpent. In other words, hey, do things with the right attitude, the right mindset, but be smart, be wise, be shrewd, deal with people appropriately. And sometimes I think as believers, we get taken advantage of because, let me give you a great example. This is not business, but it'll make a point. When we had our church on campus, there was a guy who we shared the building, and the parking spaces were split between his business and mine, but they were all in one contingent parking lot. Well, he was selling parking spaces to the Alabama football games right on campus. So guess where he was parking the cars at? In my spots. Well, I can't move those cars once they're parked because the people are at the ball game, right? And Cassandra went over there, and of course she gonna park in one because he's used up our parking spaces. Saying, I don't know who those people are. They may have been here from. No, they haven't. And then he raised his voice at Cassandra, and he had done it to someone else before, and I briefly talked to him. I got my car, Cassandra came home, I got my car, and I went back over there. And he and I had a nice little conversation. And I said, let me explain something to you. I said, I am a Christian man. And I said, my number one priority is my wife and my kids. And then I said, as pastor, it's to protect the sheep. I said, if you ever, let me explain to you really, really clear. If you ever inappropriately speak to my wife again, it will not be pretty. And he said, well, you trying to intimidate me? You trying to scare me? I said, no, I'm just promising you that if you ever, and I moved a little bit closer to him. I said, if you ever inappropriately address my wife or any other women in this church the way you did my wife again, it will not be pretty for you. You threatened to hit me? I said, sir, once again, I promise you, if you ever inappropriately speak to my wife again or the women in this church the way you did, it will not be pretty. Now, you can figure out what that means, and you can take that chance, but it's all up to you. So, most people would, now, did I say what I was going to do to him? No. But I let him know that what? He was not going to disrespect my wife and the women of the church. And I think sometimes as Christians, we get pushed around because we don't know when to step up and be firm and be strong. I mean, guys, you go back through the Bible, there's times where God says go in and just take them out. because they are contrary to my word and to my plan and to my purpose. I mean, some of the Christians today couldn't be used in the Bible time. I mean, Saul lost his kingship because he let people live and he kept some of the good stuff and was going to use it for good stuff. And God said, no, that's not what I told you to do. I told you to wipe it out. Why? Because he had to protect the seed. He had to protect the purpose. He had to protect the plan. And that's part of our responsibility. So you can see that Joseph was a very, very strong leader. And then it says, when the money of all the people of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all Egypt came to Joseph and said, give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? Our money is all gone. So now this is his own people. And then he said what? Okay, I'm going to just give this to you. No, he didn't. He said, then bring your livestock. Then bring your livestock, said Joseph. I will sell you food in exchange for your livestock since your money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, their sheep, goats, their cattle, and donkeys. And he brought them through that year with food in exchange for all livestock. Now, in today's society, we have the exact opposite. Someone gripes and complains, and we say, how much can we give them for nothing? So right here, this is both what? Government and a man of God working in conjunction. And it's like, nah, it's going to cost you something. If we had that mentality, more people would get up off their butts and do stuff. But now we have made it easy where you can almost live a decent life. Now, I don't want that life. So I'm going to get up and go to work. But for not doing anything, you can do pretty good in this country compared to other folks in other countries that work a heck of a lot harder than we do. And so I hope I'm not being too harsh today, especially somebody I'm out there in the online world today. Welcome to Harvest Church, where we're loving God and loving people. But guys, that's the reality of it is man, we're called to be stewards of what God has given us. And it is irresponsible for us to just throw stuff away and throw our pearls among, swine. God expects us to be good stewards. And King David said, I will not sacrifice anything to the Lord that didn't cost me something. So I think it's okay to call people to a higher level of accountability and responsibility and give something to get something, And then if God tells me to give you extra, then I will. So, all right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today and the opportunity we have to study your word. We ask that you continue to be blessed through the teaching of the word and through today's service. We love you, we honor you, and we bless you, and we love you, and we love people. In Jesus' name, amen.